Okay, here we go. Today we are going to practice narrative tenses for the last time this week, because then we have to keep moving to other tenses. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about milestones, and I'm gonna tell you how to narrate milestones. So we can actually use these verb tenses that we've been practicing in our own stories. The idea of narrating milestones is that it's helpful for you because you already have the information in your head. Now you only need to apply the rules that you know from grammar. So we're going to see a little bit of that. We're also going to review the homework on NEO, so we'll see how it went. But first of all, we are going to finish up the exercises that we had started last class. They were on our slides, so we're going to continue with those. I'm also going to have you work in pairs in order to practice these verb tenses with stories. So we'll see how that goes. Let me go back in my slides a little bit, just in case. Here we go. So remember that we've been practicing past tenses. We also call them narrative tenses. Why? Because they are helpful when we need to narrate stories or narrate facts or narrate also anecdotes, things that have happened to us. All those things can be narrated through narrative tenses or past tenses. They can be simple, continuous, perfect simple, and perfect continuous, like every other tense that we have in English. And we said that past simple refers to an action that started and finished in the past. The action is over, it's completed. We also mentioned that past continuous refers to actions that are also over in the past. They are completed, they started and finished, but we pay attention to the progress made in the action. Or we also make emphasis on the duration of the action. We know that usually past continuous actions are quite long, so we can refer to them as the continuous form because they lasted for a period of time. That's the idea. Then we have perfect simple, past perfect simple, which refers to an action that happened before another action in the past. It is also called the remote past. All right, so we have an action in the past simple, and before that, something else happened, and we refer to that action with the past perfect simple. Finally, we have the past perfect continuous, which also refers to an action that happens before another action in the past. So they refer to the same things, but the only difference between the simple and the continuous tenses is that the past perfect continuous refers to an action that lasted for a period of time. So we also make emphasis on the duration of the action in the past. That would be the difference. So both continuous tenses, the perfect continuous and the continuous tenses, refer to the duration of the action. Whereas the simple tenses, past simple and perfect simple, just refer to actions, completed actions in the past, but we don't specifically make emphasis on the duration. That's why we have the continuous forms. And that's pretty much it. That's what we have been talking about when referring to narrative tenses. Then we had a look at some examples. I told you that you need to use the auxiliary verb didn't for the negative sentences in the past simple, and the auxiliary verb did to ask questions in the past. Then when you are talking about affirmative sentences, you need to use the verb in the past form. For example, I went. But in the negative form, it would be I didn't go. And in the question would be, did you go? You can never say, did you went? Impossible. Or I didn't went. Impossible. All right, so I didn't go. Did you go? I went. Okay, careful with those rules. Then we said that in the past continuous, you need to use the verb to be plus an ing form. For example, I was going. We have two conjugations of the verb to be in the past, was and were. So I was going or you were going. Another thing that we mentioned about the past continuous is that we usually use it with another connector, which could be when or while. And also, when we use the past continuous, we would usually, not always, have it accompanied by another verb, which is in the past simple. So I was going to the cinema last Saturday when my boss called. We refer to these actions like as it follows. We have a long action, I was going to the cinema, that lasted for a period of time when my boss called me. That's a short action in the past, right? So we usually say that the past continuous, it's interrupted by another action which is short. So it's interrupted. That's when we usually use when. So we talk about two simultaneous things, two things that happen at the same time. One was long and the other one was short. We can also use while when we talk about also two simultaneous actions. So I was doing something while you were doing another thing, right? So it is possible to use the past continuous with two past continuous forms if you wish. So I was going to school while you were going to university, right? Two simultaneous actions happening at the same time. That's the idea with the past continuous. Then we have the past perfect simple, and we have the connector before. We usually use the connector before when referring to the past perfect simple or the past perfect continuous, because as I said earlier, the past perfect simple refers to an action that happened before another action in the past. All right, so that's why we need the connector before. Then another thing that we said is that we use the auxiliary verb had, and then we need the participle form. So before I went to the cinema, I had already finished my report. All right, so had as an auxiliary verb and finished as the participle form. What is the participle form? The third verb from the list. All right, so we have present, past, and participle. Then we have the past perfect continuous, which can also go with the connector before and for the same reason. And it is built with the auxiliary verb had, the same auxiliary verb, but here we need the participle form of the verb to be, right? So it's been. Present form of the verb to be is am, is, are. A past form was, were, participle been. All right, so in the past perfect continuous, you always need the participle form of the verb to be. What comes after the participle form of the verb to be? It's the ing form. So I had been working on my report. I had been traveling. I had been drinking water. I had been talking to my father, etc. Yeah, so had been plus ing. That's the difference in form. And yeah, that's actually how you build these past tenses or narrative tenses. You need to be very aware of the form. I completely suggest that you have all the forms clear so you actually can apply the rules. When you are first studying these past tenses, like with a little more of attention, like we are doing now, you need to take a lot of practice, and you need to practice like in a mechanical way. What do I mean by that? It's just watching how you need to build past simple tense sentences, then build the same sentences all over and over again. Do the same with the past continuous, do the same with the past perfect simple, the past perfect continuous, until your brain acknowledges all these new formats, and soon you will be able to use them naturally. It's a process as any other thing that we learn when we are talking about languages. It's a process. You first are presented the rule and introduce a rule, and then you need to start using it over and over again until it becomes natural. When it becomes natural, it's easier to use it. We may still make mistakes, of course. It's language and it's us humans. It's possible to still make mistakes, but it's going to be more natural and easier if you wish. And that's the idea of practicing. Then, I have a question in the chat. This presentation is next to the video from last Tuesday's class. I'm going to upload it again if it's necessary. All right. Yeah, so that's it with past tenses. I told you the form. I also sent the document at the beginning of the course where I shared all the tenses that we have in English with the forms and everything. So you can download that from Neo, and please have it like near you, near your desk, or near a place where you are most of the time, so you can access this information and start using these past tenses. Remember, whatever you don't use, it's going to be lost. Use it or you lose it, and that's quite true. If you don't use these tenses, you're not going to be able to add them to your vocabulary. Yeah, it's a matter of also a little awareness of the need for you to use these verb tenses. I also told you that we are not always going to be using the past perfect, simple or continuous. They are necessary just in some occasions. It's not all the time, but they are necessary specifically for putting an order between the different events that you are narrating. That helps your listener or your reader to understand what happened first, what happened then. So you know that in all stories there is a sequence, and sometimes these verb tenses help you organize those events in a sequence. That's the use of them. All right, now let's move on a little further. And another thing that we did last class was talking about these events in a person's life. So we were trying to build a kind of a story starting from these images. I told you this happened, and then this happened. Well, actually, before this happened, and this happened. We have 3 actions happening before the last one. All of them are in the past. Nothing here is happening in the future. Remember, we are talking about past tenses. All right, so we said that Aisha had a job interview this morning. This is the last event. Before that, she went to her job. So while she was going to work, she remembered her lines, all the things that she needed to say. But before that, before going to work, we have to say this. Before she had a job interview, Aisha had read a book about interviews. So she was practicing. She had practiced for that interview. And even before that, we have this action. Before her job interview, Aisha had been enjoying her free time to relax, right? So she didn't only study for the interview, but she also relaxed a little bit, right? So all this happened before the last event that was the job interview, right? So this is a very simple way of narrating a story. We have 3 actions happening in our story. It's a very short story, but it is a way to start. Another story that we narrated all together was this one. And we made a story about Enrique, who made a presentation this morning. Before the presentation, Enrique was waiting for a taxi while it was raining. Okay, so here we have 2 simultaneous actions. He was waiting, it was raining. 2 things happening at the same time, same duration. Or we have Enrique was waiting for a taxi when his boss called. Right, so we have something happening in the past and another thing interrupting the action. He was waiting, his boss called. And another thing that we have is that Enrique had drunk coffee, before he arrived to his office, right? So he had drunk coffee. He had breakfast also, we can say. Let me make this a little smaller so we can see the last one. And finally, we have the last image narrated here, which is that Enrique had been reviewing the news before he prepared the presentation, right? So he had to get informed before going to his presentation, right? So this was the last thing he did. Before that, he did other 3 things. Again, this is a very simple way of narrating a story. We have 3 facts, 3 things happening. 4 things happening in our story. And now we have to go from there to a bigger story. And that's what we did in our homework. We tried to understand a bigger story using all verb tenses. So now let me tell you a little bit about the homework. Now that we are talking about stories, let's review your homework. And let me share my screen again. That was on Neo, I think it was here. Yes, it's here. The idea here is that you needed to complete a story using all 4 tenses in the correct way. All right, so I know it must be a little difficult because, yeah, you need to first read the story, understand it, and then try to think about all the uses of the 4 past tenses in order to choose which one is the best option. So let's see it. No, it's here. Let's see how it went. So this was the test. All right, so we're going to have it like this. I'm hoping that it's visible. I don't know. Let me make it bigger so all of us can see it. All right, so we have also other verbs that are already conjugated. They are already in a past form. And I only took out a few so you could complete them with the correct verb tense. What do we have here? We thought that we were on the right path when suddenly we ran into a very familiar rock and realized that we walked in circles for quite a long time, right? So that's the first part of our story. We have a past tense here. We thought, so we already know that this is something in the past. We were, past, finish action, when suddenly something unexpected happened. What happened? We ran into. Does anybody know what run into means?
In Spanish, Nos encontramos con.
Yeah, encontrarse con. Yeah. Thank you very much, Javier. So we run into, encontrarse con. Could be with someone or with something. In this case, it's something, rock. Then we have another verb in the past, realized. So we realized that something happened, right? So what happened? Now think about this. We have the verb walk and we have the phrase for quite a long time, right? So we know that something happened for a long time in the past. And something happened before other actions in the past, right? So we have a list of actions happening, but we ran into something. This is like the biggest action in the past that happened. So we ran into something. Before running into something, we had been walking for quite a long time. Why do we have this option, had been walking? That is the past perfect continuous. Let me tell you again, because we have an action that lasted for quite a long time, for a period of time. So we're focusing on the duration. Then we know that this happened before some other actions in the past, specifically this one, when we ran into some. All right, so that's why that will be my choice. So use the past perfect continuous to focus on the duration of something that happened before some other actions in the past. Do we have doubts here? Or are we following the idea? All right, so let's continue. What do we have next? We have we, totally lost. So we have the verb to be. Let me tell you something. It would be very weird to use the verb to be in, for example, we had been being. It's impossible. We had been being. So you have already the decision of the verb to be in the past perfect continuous. You know that that's impossible. Alrighty. You have something that you need to cross out or take out of your options. Then the verb to be in the continuous form, we were being, could be possible. It's not totally impossible, but it's not so common, so I don't recommend it really. So we only have two options. We were, past simple, or we had been. We had been totally lost. Could be, but we are not talking about something that happened before an action in the past. Because when we ran into a very familiar rock, we were lost. So they are at the same level, right? This didn't happen before another action. This happened at the same time. We were lost. And then we have the next one. And the fact that we, something, already finished our water provisions wasn't very promising. This one, it's quite easy to solve if you know that already, usually, not always, goes with the perfect tenses. It also happens with the present perfect tenses, already goes with them. It's more common to use them with the perfect tenses. So we had already finished. Why? We have already, first tip, and then we are not focusing on the duration of the action. Like we are not telling how much, how long we took in order to finish our water provision. We're just saying that they were over, so we had finished them, right? So that is the best option. Let me tell you again, when you have already, you usually use the perfect tenses. If you're not focusing on the duration of the actions, then you go for the just the simple form. Javier?
Yeah. I want to know, I in the first and in the third, I used the, instead of saying I had been walking, I used I have been walking. And in the third, I made the same mistake. I have already finished. Have is in the present. That I don't have that clear.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for your question, Javier. And that's right, it's in the present. I have already finished. It's present perfect. Present perfect simple. And let me show you the other one. So we have the example. I have, what was it? I had, been walking. It's present perfect, but in this case, it's continuous. Yeah, so they can be confusing because they are very similar in form. What changes is have and had. Yeah, so this is present. If you want to make these sentences past, you have to use had. And there you go, that's past. It's the only difference. That's why I told you that verb tenses in English are very similar and easy to get confused.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, alrighty. And there's also a difference in meaning. If I say I had already finished, it means that in Spanish, it means había terminado el agua, por ejemplo. But if I say I have, it means he terminado el agua. So that's also something that can help you realize when to use each. One is había, this one is había, and the other one is he.
Y perdón, la segunda en Spanish, o sea, la segunda sería, bueno, la segunda que pusiste, pero el número 1. We realized that we had been walking sería, nos dimos cuenta que habíamos estado caminando.
Sí.
Y la otra, si le ponemos have been walking sería, y nos dimos cuenta que estuvimos caminando. O sea, podrían ser los dos, yo sé que la tarea era past y no present, pero ¿podría funcionar?
Nope. Nope, it couldn't be because this is hemos estado caminando. Entonces, y nos dimos cuenta que hemos estado caminando. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. If you say I have been walking, it's in the present. Remember that present perfect refers to an action that started in the past, but in the present it's going on. So if I say I have been walking, now I'm walking. I started walking in the past, but in the present I'm still walking. That's the difference.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And if I say I had been walking, it's over, it's in the past. I'm not walking right now in the present. So that's also a major difference between those two. All right. Do we have any other question? All righty, so let's continue for a little longer. What do we have next? Let me move this. Yeah, we were here. We had already finished our provisions, water provisions, so the situation wasn't very promising. What happened then? We decided, past simple, to go uphill because according to John, it would be easier to spot a way out from an elevated point. Right, so that was John's plan. He learned that the previous idea that it would be easier to spot a way out from elevated point. That is that referring to. He learned that from a documentary he had seen about survival. Right, so here we are using the past perfect simple because That's an action that happened before this action that we are narrating in this moment. So we decided that's what happened now, and he had seen a documentary in another point in the past, right? So before we decided, he had seen the documentary. That's why we decided to go uphill, all right? Past perfect simple. Next idea, but what the documentary, something, not teach, John, was maybe it's not such a good idea to go up a mountain when you are exhausted and waterless. That's something that we are learning also. It's not a good idea to go up a mountain when you are exhausted and waterless. So what do we have here? Well, the documentary, not teach. When this does happen, we already had seen. It could also be, and in this one, I have to be honest, I chose the option of didn't teach, but it is also possible to say hadn't teach. So if you chose hadn't teach, it's okay, because we already know that this action happened before another action in the past. But as I also told you, it's not so common to narrate every fact in the past perfect tenses, because then it gets confusing. What happened first, what happened then? So in order not to use to overuse the past perfect tenses, I would go for didn't teach. But as I'm telling you, both are correct. Both are possible because they refer to the same idea of something not happening in the past or not having happened in the past. Yeah, Marcelo?
Well, could be did not instead didn't.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The only thing that when you say did not, it's not so common to say did not even in written English, unless it is very, very formal, like in your thesis, for example. But otherwise, it's not common to write it like this. It's so much more common to go with the contracted form. But it's correct. Yeah.
Valeria,
Yeah.
could you please write the two options or that we can use in this part?
What do you mean?
You said that you preferred to use didn't teach, but there was also another option.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Now I get it. Yeah, I can write it. Yes. So hadn't, and that then we need to change the verb. Hadn't taught. We have to use the past participle. So the documentary didn't teach or hadn't taught. Both are possible. Yeah. All right. Marcelo, the other Marcelo?
Yeah, hello. Yes, hello. Well, I have a little doubt about this answer. When can we use if we are using the auxiliary verb in past, the verb after that it would be in the past the same or not?
Are you talking about the past simple?
The form of the verb after the auxiliary verb.
In the past simple?
Yes, the auxiliary verb is in past.
Yeah.
And the verb who is after that is in the present, teach.
Yep. So
we can use this verb in the past.
Let me tell you the rule again, because then it will be confusing. If I say I taught English yesterday, then we have an affirmative sentences. I taught. But if I want to say the same thing but in the negative form, like I have to say it like this: I didn't teach English yesterday. So whenever you're using The negative form of the past simple, you need to use the verb in the base form. We don't call it present because it's confusing. We call it base form. If I want to make a question, the same thing. Did I teach English yesterday? So whenever you're referring to the negative and the questions, you need to use the base form of the verb. The past form only goes with the affirmative sentences. Is that your question, Marcelo?
Okay.
Is
Okay,
it?
thank you. Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Yes, is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, so this is important. Remember the rules because otherwise you'll be making basic mistakes. It's common for students to make these mistakes anyways, but it's a good idea to get rid of them. All right, that's the past simple. Where were we? Yeah, but what the documentary didn't teach John was that maybe it's not such a good idea to go up a mountain when you are exhausted and waterless. Next idea. We had been trekking, so here we have the past perfect continuous. Why? Because we are talking about an action that happened before an action in the past, and also we are focusing in the direction, right? So I want you to notice that the trekking is long, right? So we had been trekking 1 mile when we started to have a horrible feeling that that might be our last trek. Of course, we say anything. And here I chose the past simple, like we didn't, I forgot to write down the verb, but yes, let me correct it right away. We didn't say. So we didn't say anything. Why am I using here the past simple? Because we are referring to a specific action in the past. Something didn't happen. I don't want to say that this happened before another action. It's not necessary. I just wanted to express that we remained silent. We didn't say anything. So it's better to use it in the past simple form. Questions up to this point?
Valeria.
Yeah.
I put it didn't say in the quiz,
Yes.
and it was wrong.
Yes, it's wrong because of my mistake. I forgot to write the verb say. So I'm going to correct it right after the class. But if you wrote didn't say, it's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other question here or comment? Okay, let's continue a little further. Oh, I forgot to delete those ones. Alrighty, so we have another action here, but it's not necessary to put it in a different tense because we already know what it's referring to, and it's a short action that didn't happen in the past. Then let's continue. But we could see in each other's eyes that at that moment we precisely the same. So here, let me give you a tip. At that moment and precisely, also that helps us. Precisely the same. So what do we have here? Two people that are lost are keeping silence even though they think they are lost. So they look at each other's eyes and realize that they have the same thought in their minds. So I would go for the past continuous because at that moment they realized that something was happening at the same time. A simultaneous action was happening. What was the simultaneous action? The thinking. Both were thinking the same idea. How else can you know that this is the past continuous? Because of the context, right? So you know that they didn't say anything, but they realized that they were thinking precisely the same, right? So that helps you. And also thinking about simultaneous actions. Then we have another one. We couldn't walk any longer. Couldn't here, it's in the past, by the way. We couldn't walk any longer, so we decided to sit and rest quietly because neither of us wanted to share any of our gloomy thoughts. Then something else happens. Hello, can I help you? We suddenly heard. We raised our heads and, pay attention, we have a verb in the past, simple, and a little man with slanted eyes and a childish grin. So what do we have here? We raised our heads and probably we would use the past simple form. Why? Because two things happening very closely to each other. We raised our heads and saw. It's very common that those two things happen very closely together, and they are short actions also. All right, so we raise our hands and see. It's 1 second from raising and seeing what's going on. So short actions also go in the past simple form. We raised our heads and saw a little man with slanted eyes and a childish grin. We, again, something else happens, and it's a short action. He, I said we. It was a short action, but I want to make an emphasis that this lasted for a period, all right? So when he said hello, he was already there standing, all right? So I need to mention that this lasted for a period. That's why I would use he was standing. Let me say again. When he says, hello, can I help you? He was already standing there. So when we raised our heads and saw him, he had been standing for some quite of a long time. So he was standing, right next to us. I wonder where he came from and how long he stand there. So I wonder and where, and we have something here, and I would choose had come, the past perfect simple. Why? Because I wonder in the past when he had come from. The action of him coming from somewhere happened before I wondered. So here we have an action happening before another action in the past. Let me put it this way. So I wondered where he had come from. So he came from another place before I wondered. All right, so this happened before another action in the past. That's why I would go for the past perfect simple. And finally, I wonder where he had come from and how long he is standing there. Again, the action of standing there, it's long. We know that because we know that before saying, hello, can I help you? He was already standing there. So I would go for the past perfect continuous here because, again, this action happened before another action in the past. I wonder how long he had been standing there. So the action of being standing there, it's longer and it happened before. All right, so that's how I would solve this kind of exercises. It's tricky, yep, and it takes a long time, yep, but it's useful in order for us to develop some kind of logic of the language, right? So it is very useful to write, and it is very useful when you are reading something in English before, without having to translate every word that you're reading. What happened to us learners of the English language is that we say, I understand everything when I read. But what you actually do is you translate everything you read, and probably you're not understanding what the text says. You are translated into something that you know, but probably that's not what the text says. So that's why I recommend also these tenses, because it gives you a precise logic of the language, and it helps you develop real reading skills and real writing skills, right? So it takes effort, but it's useful, I promise. All right, do we have questions here? Edmundo?
Yes, Valeria, good evening. Why we can't use past continuous in the last one? I don't know why we use past perfect continuous.
Oh, all right. In the standing part?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Just because I wondered in the past, and he had been standing there before I wondered. So the standing part happened before I wondered. That's the logic. Let me write it. So I wondered, and he had been standing. Right, so two things that happened, but one happened before another one. That's the logic. Remember that when we use the perfect tenses, it's just because we have one action that happened in the past and another action that happened before that. That's the idea. If I use the past simple here, it doesn't make sense, right? So I wonder how long he was standing there. Doesn't make any sense. It is tricky to understand that sentence. It is easier to understand it when you use the past perfect, because then you know that something happened before I wondered, before another action. Is that helpful, Edmundo, or not so much?
Yes, help.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So yeah, as we said, and as some of us mentioned, some of you also texted me saying like, "Whoa, this is trickier than I thought." But yeah, I know it's trickier, but in our level, it's useful and it's also necessary. Yeah, it takes time, practice, and sometimes we're going to make mistakes. The best advice I can give you here is that you practice a lot and you don't get so frustrated, because when we get frustrated, we start thinking that this is impossible, or sometimes, as my students ask me, well, is this even useful? I'm telling you, it is, but it takes a lot of effort. So, that's the benefit you're going to get. Better understanding of the text, real reading skills, and real writing skills. So yeah, if we work towards that goal, we'll feel less frustrated. I'm going to keep sharing these kind of exercises with you, Neo, so we can practice. Even though we are going to change the topic next week, we are going to continue with Unit 5, but it is necessary for us to practice the past tenses. Now, let's go back to the presentation, and I wanted to finish up the exercises that we were completing last class. They were very similar exercises to the ones that we completed with the present tenses, but they are referring only to the past tenses. We completed the first three, if I don't remember, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah, this was the last one that we completed, and this one was a bit tricky because we had to complete 2 blank spaces or choose 2 options. That's the last one that we completed. Now let's try with another sentence. I have this one. When I saw Clara, I realized that she, something, much in all those years. Again, we have 4 options: past simple, continuous, past perfect simple, and past perfect continuous. I'm gonna start the poll like I did last class, and we can start sharing our answers. Of course, you have to take a moment to think about it. This can be a little tricky because of the connector when. So think about it clearly. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds in order to give everybody the chance to answer. All right, we have enough answers. Let me end the poll and share the results. What do we have? We have a winner, and according to you, it's C, past perfect simple. Let me read it with that answer. When I saw Clara, I realized that she had changed much in all these years. Or she hadn't changed much in all these years. How do we know if it's affirmative or negative? Right, this one is really tricky. Does anybody want to tell me why they chose the answer that they chose? Or are you shy tonight? Who do we have? I don't see it. Yeah, Edmundo?
Yes, I think it's past continuous.
Yeah, what do you
Because
think is past continuous?
because when she saw Clara, when I saw Clara, at the same time I realized that she changed much in all these years. 2 actions at the same time.
2 actions happening at the same time. All right, yeah, all right, could be. Let's see. Does anybody else have another idea?
Valeria, can I tell?
Yes, of course.
So, for my opinion, I see 2 actions. Clara saw and no, I saw and Clara changed. That is 2 action. So the order of this action, Clara changed before, then I saw the Clara, and Clara changed during many years. So past perfect continuous.
Right.
It's my opinion.
All right, yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Good. All right, so yeah, all those years, we have a reference in time. And then I saw Clara, I realized maybe those 2 happened at the same time. I saw her, I realized at the same time. I would say I agree a little bit, not with everything that Ludmila said. I don't agree that it's the perfect continuous because, yeah, she had been changing much all these years. It's not so common to refer to the changes in the continuous form. Yeah, it's not so common. So I wouldn't
understand. It sounds bad.
Yeah, it sounds weird. Even in Spanish, if we think about it in Spanish, it sounds weird. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, maybe there's another option. Let's hear Mariana. Mari, what do you want to tell us?
Hi, Val. Now you said that for me, I understand the rule that Ludmila explained, and I thought the same before, but it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose C. Option. Yes, that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't sound good.
that's correct. Yeah, and I agree with you and Mari and Ludmila. It's this one. So Ludmila explained it very well, but still I'm going to mention a little bit about it. So what do we have? I saw Clara and I realized. What did I realize? That she had changed a lot. When did she change? In the past, of course, before I saw her. Before I saw her, she had changed. Because if she changes while I see her, it's weird. It doesn't happen. That's not real life. So of course, she changed before I saw her. So that's why we have the past perfect simple here. Now I have something else to explain. And this is something that you need to remember for previous courses if you took previous courses with me. I have a comment about match. We have much and many in English. Much is used for uncountable nouns and many for countable nouns. Then we have a lot of or a lot, which is for both countable and uncountable. Then if there is a rule about much in English that I'm hoping that you remember, but we don't use much in affirmative sentences. It sounds too formal, too weird. So we only use much in negative sentences and when we are trying to say this in an affirmative way, we need to say a lot or a lot of. Let me write down the rule in case it's necessary. We don't use much in, what did I say? Affirmative sentences. Just because it doesn't sound well, it sounds weird. It sounds too formal. Nobody speaks like that, right? So what happens then if I have much here? What do I have to say? What would be my answer?
Hadn't
Yeah, there you go.
changed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. She hadn't changed much in all those years. All right, so this is also a matter of remembering past rules that we learned somewhere in the past. All right, so much for negative sentences only. She hadn't changed much all these years. All right, questions about this one? Yeah, so let's continue. We have solved this one, tricky one also. And remember, we have the connector when, and I told you that usually it goes with the past continuous, but not only, not exclusively. Now let's see another one. We have when he entered the room, somebody hit him in the head. All right, so this is not so tricky, a little tricky. Let me relaunch this so we can answer it. We have two actions here also. Let me give you a little hint. We have two actions, but those two actions are short. All right. Yeah. Let me share the results. That's what we get. That's the past continuous as a winner. Now I told you 2 actions. 2 of them are short actions. Does anybody want to tell me why they chose what they choose?
Me, Valeria.
Yeah,
Sashenka.
let's go, Sashenka. Yep.
I choose A, past simple, because the action of hit is short and instantaneous, and there is no another tip or clause that the action lasted. Thank you, lasted a lot, like several times in the head, for example.
Yeah.
So I think it's past simple.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sashenka. Yeah, it would be hit. So what is the past form of hit? Hit, actually. It's one of those verbs that have the same form in all forms. Present hit, past hit, participle hit. Right, so we have when he entered the room, somebody hit him in the head. So he entered, somebody hit him. Short actions. It cannot be past continuous because when he entered the room, somebody was hitting him. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So the action of hitting somebody is never so long. You hit somebody in just a second again. So in that case, I would go also for the past simple. 2 short actions happening one after the other. That's the idea. Questions here? All right, I'm hoping that we agree. And yeah, remember the verb last means durar. It's the same as last, as último, but it can also be durar. All right, and let's go with another one. We have this one. He admitted that he take all the money from the box. So we have, again, 2 actions, and one action is admitted. Another action is take. So what could it be? Let me again relaunch this, and let's see your answers. Okay, I think this one is a little easier than the previous ones. Okay, let me share the results. Oops. Let me share them again. Yeah, that's what we got, and we've got the past perfect simple as the winner. And let me tell you immediately that I agree with that one, because we have an action happening, which is he admitted. That's the first action. And before admitting something, of course, he committed the crime. So before admitting that he had taken before admitting the truth, he had taken all the money from the box. All right, so what happened first? He had taken the money, and then he admitted it. That's the idea. How can we realize this? Just because of the word admit. You usually don't admit something before committing the crime, right? So you admit something when the action is already over, right? So you only admit things that you've done before. That's how I would explain this one. The other tenses, for example, he admitted that he took all the money from the box. Could be, it makes sense, but it is better when you use the past perfect because then you mention that something happened before another action in the past. It's better. Do we have questions about this one?
Yes, is it really wrong if we say he admitted that he stole all the money from the box?
If we use the past simple, it's not completely wrong, but it sounds a little weird, but it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you would have people saying he took all the money. So yeah, you can use it in the past simple, not completely wrong. All right, let's go with the next one. We have, I knew he cried because his eyes were red. Let's see how it goes with this one. Let me relaunch. And again, let me show you. We have one action that's happened, and then something else, which is cry. Apparently, this one is also easier than the previous ones. All right, let me share the results. That's what we get, and yeah. This is a little tricky. I would go for the perfect tenses, any of those, depending on your emphasis. If I want to make emphasis in the duration of the action, like I want to make emphasis that he cried a lot and for a long time, maybe I would go for the past perfect continuous. If I just want to make emphasis on the action that happened before another action in the past, but not emphasize the time, the duration, then I would go for the past perfect simple. But I would go for the perfect tenses. Why? Again, we have an action in the past, which I knew, and before I knew something, he had cried, right? So that's what I would go for, something happening before another action. Then we have the option of past continuous. I knew he was crying because his eyes were red. It doesn't make a lot of sense because when you say he was crying, it's like when you knew, you saw him crying. So it would be better if the sentence says, I knew he was crying because I saw him crying. You know? But apparently in the sentence, we didn't see him crying. We just saw his red eyes. So I think that he cried before we saw him. That's what I think because of the context. Questions here?
I don't agree with you.
All right, tell me why not?
Yes, because the person cried alone during a long time. So the eyes are red. If he or she cried during short time, so her eyes didn't or couldn't be red.
Right. Yes. Well, now I agree with you, Ludmila. I don't know much about crying then. So yeah, if your eyes go red, probably, yeah, you cried for a long time. Yeah. So Yeah, I would think that both are correct. If you think that crying a lot means red eyes, then go for the continuous form. But yeah, they refer to the same thing, that an action happened before another action. And then if you want to go for the past perfect continuous, it's because you want to make emphasis on the duration of the action. So perfectly correct. We have the last one. Let's go with this one. What do we have here? We fly for about 20 minutes when the plane was hit by turbulence. So let me relaunch this and see what happens. Let me mark one action. So something happened for about 20 minutes when another thing happened, which is this one. This actually go together. Pay attention also to the duration. Okay, apparently this is a little trickier. We have different answers. All righty, let me stop and share it. Share the results. We have the past continuous. Maybe the past continuous is our favorite tense, but it's not useful all the time. In this case, I would say that the past continuous doesn't go. No, I wouldn't like it, because we were flying for 20 minutes when the plane was hit by turbulence. No, it doesn't make sense to me. We were flying. I don't think so. Yeah, it sounds weird. I understand what you are trying to say, but it sounds really weird if you say we were flying. No, it doesn't make sense. In this case, I would also go for the perfect tenses, and I feel more confident about the past perfect continuous. Let me explain why. We were hit by turbulence. That happened, but before that, something else happened, and was happening for a long time, right? So before we were hit by turbulence, we had been flying for 20 minutes, right? So that was happening, that was going on. We had been flying, we had been having a safe trip or a safe flight, but we were hit by turbulence. So in this one, it sounds better to use the past perfect continuous, because something happened before something else, or something was going on before something else. Right. Do we agree on this one, or do we have some doubts?
Valeria, in that sentence, how we use the past continuous?
Do you mean if it's possible to use the past continuous?
You said that it's not possible, but it's correct to say we were flying when the plane was hit by turbulence?
Yes, it is possible.
Okay.
Yeah, if you change it a little bit, and if you take out the minutes, it is possible. Like this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, Edmundo, because yeah, sometimes just a few words give us another sense of the context. So yeah, if we take out for about 20 minutes all this phrase, It is perfectly possible to say we were flying when we were hit by turbulence. That's possible. But if we say we were flying for about 20 minutes, it doesn't make sense. In that case, you need the past perfect continuous. Good one. All right. Do we have any other question here? No questions? All right. So now let me use the last minutes of the class to show you a little bit about life milestones, so I can have you practice with those actions. I told you that past tenses are called narrative tenses, and they are called narrative tenses for a reason. I told you that the reason is that they help us communicate different things that happened in the past, during some time in the past, and they help us organize those actions. I also told you it's not the same. Let me make it like this so I can illustrate my last class example. I told you I can tell you about the movie Titanic. Oops, not writing. Let me go back. Titanic. So I'm talking about this one because this is very knowledgeable. Like all of us know the story at least. I can tell you about the movie, and I say it's about a ship that sank. A girl and a boy fall in love. He dies. All right, so I can tell you the story like that. It's okay, you will understand kind of the main idea of the thing. We have two people falling in love, someone dies because the ship sank. It's easy to understand, and we can actually acknowledge that something happened here. But if I tell you the same idea using connectors and using verb tenses, narrative tenses, it is so much easier to understand what I mean. It's so much easier to understand what happened when, and it's also so much more interesting when you tell me a story like that. Because if you tell me a story just with short sentences, using different verb tenses, present, past, whatever comes to your mind, for me as a listener or as a reader, it's very difficult to actually follow the flow of the story, right? So it is always better to narrate a story using different connectors, using the correct verb tenses, and giving emphasis to the correct things. It's so much more interesting to listen to a story like that. So I highly recommend that you go from this to something more elaborate, something like we read on in the homework, like a whole story, something happening before another action, something lasting for a period, using the right connectors. It's so much more interesting to read something like that than to read something like this. All right, so this is something that we need to do when we move from one level to the other. When we are beginners, we speak like this and we write like this because we don't know how to do it. We don't know many verb tenses. But when we are intermediate or advanced students, we need to move from this to a real text. And that's what we are trying to do here, right? Also, I told you that whenever we are speaking, whether it's in Spanish or in English, we are sharing stories. I could share a story that happened to me this morning while I was having breakfast. That's a story. Or I can tell you something that happened to me while I was on the elevator. That's a story. When I said story, I don't mean literature. So don't say like, "Ah, I will never write a book, so I don't need to use past tenses." It doesn't work like that. Whatever happens to you and you tell it to another person, that's a story. That's an anecdote. And whenever you are telling stories and anecdotes, you need to use past tenses. Or when you see a movie and you want to tell it to another person, it's so much more interesting when you tell me the story of the movie with connectors and verb tenses than when you tell me like this, right? So that's why we are trying to move from the basic stories, the beginner's narrations, to something more elaborate and more interesting. And that is going to be your next homework. And it is related to milestones. So let me ask you, does anybody know what milestones means? I think I asked you this already. Can you remind me what milestones is?
I think it's a special moment in our lives or symbolic time in your life, for example.
Yeah. Symbolic times, important times. Agreed. Also, they are like the most important moments of your life. Of course, this could be anything. Like you can consider like learning to drive was a milestone in your life. It depends on each person. So in Spanish, we call them hitos, and they refer to the most important moments or the most symbolic moments, as Marcelo said. And that's right. That's why we have that image of these people's milestones, like getting a car, saving money, having a baby, getting a new house, spending life together or growing old together, traveling, graduating, getting a job, getting married, etc. So it's up to you what you consider a milestone in your life. There's no a rule here, right? So you can choose whatever it's important for you in your life. And milestones also are useful to narrate our own stories. And that's what I want you to work on during the last few days that we have before the next class. I want you to work on your milestones. I want you to start by being born, like introducing yourself. So I was born in blah, blah, blah. You can say in, let me tell you this because I know that you can make mistakes with this one. I'm talking about prepositions. You are going to use in if you are going to refer to a year. For example, I don't know, in let's go back. I don't know, 1984, for example. So in 1984. And what happens if I want to say the month I was born? I have to say, oh, that's not right. I have to say in July, for example. All right, so in for months and for years. If I want to say the exact day I was born, I have to say on, right, for dates. Then would be on the 18th of July, 1984, or you can also write it as many people do it right now, on July 18th, 1984. All right, so this is important for your milestones because you are going to be using prepositions and you need to remember this. In for years and months, on for dates. And what I was explaining here is that I want you to narrate your life. Tell me the story of your life, starting from the day you were born. I forgot to write the word born. I was born in on. Then you can tell me I went to that school. When I was 7 years old, I learned to play the piano. When my mom moved, when my parents split up, when my parents got married, when I met another person, etc. I want you to tell me everything that you want to tell me about your life, going through the milestones, all right? Paying attention to the milestones. Could be anything, even as I told you, learning to drive, trying a new flavor of ice cream, whatever you think is important, tell it. I would appreciate this time if you could give me long narrations. It's going to take me a long time to read them, but it's going to be helpful for both of us. Like we can actually realize if we are using the verb tenses correctly. Of course, I would like you to write more than 10 lines, at least one paragraph. Please, don't be shy, be generous. More than 10 lines. 10 lines is one paragraph. Also, I want you to use the connectors, all the connectors that you know, and also the connectors that we practice during this term, like whereas, while, although, even though, and all of the other ones that you know from before. Use all the verb tenses as you can and be generous with your narration. Where are you going to write this text? On Drive, right? So please go to Drive. You can create a new document on the folder that I created for you, and please share it there. Let me show you how to do that. If you don't know, let me show you very quickly, and let me open the place where I need to show you. Now let me share my screen. And I want you to go to the personal files that I created for you. You go there. For example, let's say that I'm Ivan. I go here. I click Write, and then it says Google Docs. I click there. I create it and I share it. And then I start writing. I was born, blah, 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 blah. Right? If you want to, you can put the title, which would be milestones, right? That's all I'm asking. Then, if you finish writing your text, you close it, and that's it. I'm going to be able to see it. Don't share it. Don't send it to me on WhatsApp or on email. It's not necessary. Whenever you create something here, whenever you complete an exercise, it's going to be saved automatically, and I can see it. You can see that it's here. So please do that. I would very much appreciate it if you did it before Tuesday's class. So if you can do it by Tuesday at midday, that would be awesome. So I can have the afternoon to read them before the class. That is it. So more than 10 lines, please be generous. Do we have questions about the homework? No questions, no comments? All right, yeah. So that
Ale,
would
how
be...
long how long?
I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat, please, Marcelo?
How long have to do the milestone? How
Yeah.
long?
As I said, one paragraph or more than 10 lines. Lines meaning, yeah, you know what a paragraph is.
Okay.
More than that. Yep. We have a question in the chat. Let me answer that. When do we use at? It's used for places, specific places, like I'm at the supermarket, or for addresses. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to share an image of the prepositions. I have a document also for that. Oh, okay, so that's been all. Thank you very much, people, for coming. If you have extra questions, stay with me. Otherwise, you may go. Marcelo, tell me.
Have to describe one milestone in 10 lines or many milestones in the paragraph.
As many as you can, as many as you want.
Okay.
All right, do we have more questions?